Hey, all you cool cats out there, you lovers of literature, you lovers of Stevie, really. Welcome to the Fantasy Fiends show where we talk about everything fantasy, science fiction, and ooh, baby, anything awesome. I am Stevie Collier, and today I am here with Andy Peliquin, and today we have the honorable guest, Somaiya Daud.
Hi.
Daud.
Yeah.
Daud?
It's not spelled how it's pronounced.
So what is it? How do you say it?
Daud.
Daud. Oh, okay, Daud. Andy, what's going on over here, man?
Oh, oops! This is the wrong podcast for that. Sorry, guys.
Wrong one. Get out of here.
Sorry. I was thinking it was Monday. I thought it was deranged and questing time, but I got my wires crossed. Normal hair. What's left of it? There we go. It's me again, Stevie. In case you didn't recognize me, it's me again.
Amazing. So you wear that the entire time?
Absolutely. That's like not only during the game, but like the rest of the week too. It's just always on.
Your wife loves it, I'm sure.
Oh, just her face lit up with just utter delight when she saw me opening the package. Just absolute delight.
It's funny. I feel like just men are just kids. You just opened up a barbarian helmet package, and I just opened up a package filled with Goosebump books from eBay.
Oh, nice!
I'm a huge fan. I got a T-shirt too because R.L. Stine is the reason I started writing. So,
oh, nice.
He has a writing program. Well, he used to on the old Scholastic website. He had a writing program, and I would write short stories, and which everyone knows ended up getting me in a lot of trouble. But Somaiya, this is all about you. Tell us a little bit about you. Everything. We want to know.
Oh, everything. So my name is Somaiya. I am the author of the Mirage duology, which starts with Mirage and ends with Court of Lions. I was until March a PhD student, and now I'm a PhD graduate, and I teach at a local university. I teach composition, comics, and fantasy, which is very fun.
Nice.
It's very fun. I can hash Tolkien with the best of them, which is great for me. My students hate it though. And yeah, I think that's really all there is to know about me.
What is your PhD?
Oh, I am unfortunately a Victorianist. So I studied, I wrote my dissertation on 19th century literature, world literature, translation, and Orientalism. So thinking through how the medieval revival and Orientalism as like academic institutions colluded to create particular ideas of empire in the past, present, and future.
Very cool. I am going to pretend that I understood all of that because I am definitely not that sort of intelligent.
The short version of it, or like the like layman's version of it, is how we think of the Middle Ages through fantasy was born in the 19th century. And so my dissertation is about how like we always talk about like the medieval revival as a field without talking about like Orientalism, because Orientalism is both like a mode of racism, but was also like an academic field of study. And so how those two things were in conversation with one another.
That sounds pretty interesting and pretty complicated too.
It was fun until it wasn't.
Like everything else in life.
Yeah.
So a PhD in, is it Victoria? Isn't Victorianism?
Victorian literature.
Okay, so you know a lot about Victoria's Secret.
No.
Okay, I'm out.
You know, the one thing I know about
Stevie,
Victoria's Secret is Jeff Epstein apparently funded it.
You're joking.
No, I'm so serious. Like this was a weird thing that I found out, and I was like, well, cool.
Well, that ruined that store for me, and I love going in there. You know, I love just going in there and standing.
How many of them have you been banned from, Stevie?
Oh no.
Well, most of them, but I wear a different mask every time, so they don't know.
Well, I'm glad to have ruined it for you then.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I read a book from the Victorian age in French, and it had a lot to do with feminism, because probably the most difficult class in school I ever took was feminism French. So it was just all feminist studies in French, and I was the only dude and everything I said was scrutinized. Luckily, I think I did pretty well. I never offended anybody, but oh
Do you
man.
remember the name of the book?
I wish I knew. I'm going to keep looking as we talk, but I just remember it being extremely difficult. So, because not ancient French, but old French was different, just like old English. And so I had to learn all the terminology. And by far, it was the hardest thing I had to do was read that book. And the professor was a son of a bee, because he would read the chapter before us. And he got his PhD off of this book. And he would read the chapter again before us and ask questions that he knew we had to read it. You could not cliff note it. Because I was totally going to cliff note that whole thing.
Imagine that a professor expecting you to actually read the literature.
You can't cliff note in college. I had reading quizzes for my students this summer because we weren't meeting in person, so I wanted to make sure that they had read the chapters of the Silmarillion that they had to read. And I remember I asked one of them, and they're like really simple questions just to make sure that you read closely. And I asked them, where is Morgoth's primary fortress located? And they all picked Angband, but that's the fortress and not where it's located, which is Thangorodrim. And I got a bunch of like angry emails from students who were like, this was a trick question. I was like, it's not a trick question. The language was very clear.
Do you think you could give Stephen Colbert a run for his money?
No, because I bet you he's read all of the history of the peoples of Middle Earth, and I have not, because I don't have money for 12 volumes.
I feel like since he sort of like made that a thing, that he was super good at Lord of the Rings, and it got popularity, he's probably like leaned into it a whole lot more and like memorized everything now, just so he can make sure that no one can ever out Tolkien him.
Well, it seems also though like his thing is the Third Age, and I don't care about the Third Age, so I wouldn't be able to like duel with him anyway, because I don't care about humans. I care about elves, and all of the interesting elf stuff happens in the First Age.
Well, then I have to ask, are you excited or not at all excited about this new Lord of the Rings TV show that's going to be coming out in the next few years?
Oh, I gotta tell you, I had such an emotional roller coaster reaction to that. Because at first I was like, yes, more Tolkien. And then they were like, we're doing the Second Age. And I was like, you picked the thing that is the easiest to fuck up. Because I'm talking to you guys like you're also Tolkien fans.
Yeah, a little bit. I will say that I know the difference between the Second and Third Age. That's kind of as far as I go.
We sort of like it.
In the Second Age, you have Numenor, which is like Tolkien's Atlantis, and they're all of the blessed men get to live on the island, and all of the men who fought with the enemy live on land and don't know how to write or build or anything like that. And it's like the easiest one to be racist about, because the divisions are really clear, and like all of the people who fought with Morgoth are also men of the South and the East. And so there's all of this like very weird race stuff, because Tolkien is very weird about race. And so it was the one where I was like, it could be really awesome, or they could fuck it up really bad. And then I saw the map, and I was like, oh, your map looks like an Imperial map, which is bad. So I go back and forth, because I'm always really happy when there's like another huge fantasy media franchise, because I think that's really good for people like me who write fantasy. But then also, like, I paid for the last season of Game of Thrones so that I could come up with an annotated list of why I hated it.
Yeah, that's definitely a podcast discussion that we can have.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find it, but I think it's interesting. Not many people know this, but I almost became an attorney. Wrong. Oh God, what a horrible mistake that would have been. And it was actually one of my law professor, and he told me the truth. He's like, it's not fun, Stevie. It's not. And he loved being a lawyer. He's like, but I'm a dual man. This is my thing. I love sitting down and just going over old cases. And I'm like, not my style. But I did find it. It's La Princesse de Clèves. So the Princess of Clèves. I don't know how to say it in English. Cleves. Cleves, the Princess of Cleves. That's what we had to study.
Is it about Anne of Cleves?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't remember, honestly. As soon as I read it, I tried to forget it. No. The story's good. It's just so freaking hard. You had to wait until the next class period to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And but
Stevie, a question from the audience: what kind of attorney were you going to be?
So I was kind of torn because I wanted to make a lot of money, but I also wanted to help people. So I was probably going to lean to making money. And so I was going to be like a, trademark lawyer or someone that helps with like software, but then you had to learn software, and I was planning on doing that crap. A huge mistake either way. I just was in it for the money. And there's no way I would have been happy. I'm much happier now. So, and so I was studying for that LSAT for like half a year.
Oh,
kind of.
I had a friend who went through law school, and then we had another friend who was like, I might go to law school, and she was like, no, don't go to law school. She just like shut it down. Even she was like, do not go to law school.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't do that. But so Somaiya, am I saying that right? Somaiya, we have an interesting topic for today, but we have some things to do before that. So I'm going to hold off on my questions for you, my prying questions. Andy, what happens now? It's only been 170 episodes.
156 episodes, 157 maybe even, and you still don't get it right. It's the cool thing for the week, Stevie.
Cool thing of the week. Well, I thought we did multiple things now. I have multiple cool things, but do you guys
take it away? Take it away, Stevie.
Okay. So first cool thing that's not really cool, but it was an interesting experience. I listened to in the car with my girlfriend the new Twilight book by Stephanie Meyer.
Oh.
With but you're behind the scenes in Edward's head. But I got to tell you, it was garbage. I mean, it was just not good. Now I thought the people give her a hard time for the writing, and I thought it was decent. I like the adjectives she used. They're not. Some of them were smart, but I mean, it was okay. It was okay written, but there's no mystery. We liked Belle because we didn't know who the vampire was or what was going to happen. Is he going to eat her? No, we know when we're behind Edward that he's not going to do anything. We've already read Twilight, so I was bored out of my mind except for making fun of it because, oh my God, he would go on for 10 minutes about how her cheeks were red. Ooh, it was rough. And Lisa never got mad at me for making fun of it. She says it's what men should do in this situation. But even she didn't like it, but she's a huge Twilight fan, and I liked the first book. But God, that was a rough experience. Go listen to it, Andy. Please.
That's a hard pass for me.
I think you should. It will make you want to rip your ears off. I'm a cheesy dude. Like, I'll be super romantic, like overly romantic. This book, whoa, it like sucks your breath out of your lungs, like JCPenney's perfume section. Oh my God. If you've been to a perfume section, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so
you didn't have to explain the joke, Stevie. We all got it.
Sure. I don't know if it's just me where you're like, because I have asthma. I'm like, oh no. The good news is I've started writing Ninja and Fox. It's up for free. I'm not charging for it. Maybe one day whenever I take it down and I get a professional editor, but you can read it right now. It's on Collier's Conquerors. If you want me to post a link, I can, but I think chapter 1 of that story that I'm writing, and it's going to be a novel, is the best writing I've ever done in my entire life. Yes, I truly think so. And it's exciting me because I want to move on to chapter 2. So that is by far, if you want to see where my level has come from my first novel, go read chapter 1 of Ninja and Fox. I think it's going to be amazing. All the characters are already fleshed out. I know exactly where the story's going. So that's my good news. And then the other news, which is good and quick, is I'm getting a 4K webcam so you can see me even better. So
like all of the pores and the unshaven, just really full dose of Stevie.
You'll be able to smell my breath. That's how good it is. Oh yeah.
Promises.
But that is my good news. Finally, I feel like I had some sustenance, that people can actually go and taste. So go try Ninja and Fox. It's everything I write is weird. So you're gonna enjoy it. So that's my cool thing. What about one of you two?
Somaiya, I believe you are up.
Yeah. My really cool thing is I got plants for the first time. Yeah, I got a pair of calatheas. One of them is named Utna, and the other one is named Anthe because I'm a huge Revolutionary Girl Utna fan. And they're hanging out. They're doing good. My cat Simba is constantly trying to eat them, and they're like just out of his reach. So he'll like set up shop somewhere and then just stare at it and then start crying because he wants to like make the jump and he can't. But I'm learning a lot about how I don't actually know anything about plants. I was like, this is gonna be great. I like realized I was like, I don't know how to water plants. Like I just don't know. So I'm really scared they're gonna die. And I actually was supposed to water them today and I forgot.
Set yourself a reminder. Ooh, what I've been doing recently is I send myself an email through Gmail and then I schedule a reminder.
Oh,
so
that's a great idea.
Now I've got like 50 snoozed emails and they're just going to go on. I've got one set for like next year in April. Like it's super handy. It's like it's replaced Google Calendar half the time.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I gotta do that because I'm actually looking at Anthe right now and she's a little, her leaves were like this when I got her and now they're kind of like this. So I think I need to take care of that. And I'm living a really like boring life in quarantine, which is great for me because I would really prefer a non-exciting quarantine.
Absolutely.
You said your cat's name is Simba?
Mm-hmm.
We had a cat growing up named Simba, and he was awesome. Just a total real cat. And he would go and kill things, and then just be super sweet in the house.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh. Well, I guess he kind of ran away. You know, cats will go and hide when they die. He was getting old, but man, what a great cat. Great name.
Simba's a completely indoor cat because we have coyotes in our neighborhood.
Are you in LA?
No, I'm in Seattle.
Okay. I love Seattle.
A question from the audience, Somaiya. Did you name your plants?
Yes, I did. They're both varieties of calathea, and so one is a medallion, and I don't remember what the other one is. And one is Utna, and the other one is Anthe.
And what do those names mean?
Oh, they're the names of the main characters for this anime called Revolutionary Girl Utna, which it's super bizarre.
Oh, I gotta watch it then.
Yeah, so it's like I watched the movie last summer, and there's like literally a line where a character goes, "Did you think you were the only person who could transform into a car?" And it's like delivered like it's a completely normal thing. So it's very, very bizarre. Like people turn into cars. There's all of this like reality slippage stuff. Fantastic. It's never completely like in concert with itself. Like there are all of these inconsistencies, and then people ask the writer, and he's like, "No, that was on purpose." And I have like a galaxy brain theory about how like the manga, the anime, and then the movie are all like I'm gonna sound like a crazy person. They're all like spiritual reincarnations of one another. So you're meeting the characters in like 3 different lifetimes, and they're making different mistakes, and then they're finally resolved in the movie. But that's the kind of series it is where like you need that kind of a theory to make sense of all of the adaptations. I love it. But
did you say one of your plants' names was Andy?
Anthe.
Oh, I was gonna say be careful. It'll probably grow to be like 50 feet tall.
Oh God.
Oh, Stevie with the bad puns.
There's a picture of us, Andy. I'm gonna look for it real quick of me standing next to you at the bar. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It's so you're like, Stevie, what's Andy looks like normal size. I look like a dwarf. I'm gonna find it. So well, thank you.
Find it and frame it, Stevie, right behind you, along with your swords.
The frame will cut half of me off, though. Okay, Andy.
It's my turn to share some good news.
Yes.
Okay. So some good news from today. Today I was working on Cerberus Book 10, which has been a ton of fun, and I'm actually writing a Jeffrey Epstein-like character into it. I didn't plan to do it, but it just happened. It was like the perfect way to take the story. So as of like 2 days ago, there's this Jeffrey Epstein-like guy, and like down to everything except this one, he doesn't end up killing himself. and all of the dirt gets leaked, so like people go to jail and stuff, which is sort of wish fulfillment in a way. But I was sort of stuck at this this plot point that affected the whole rest of the series. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but there is this mountain right outside my window. Is it too bright? That mountain up there. So I went and hiked it. And I just had my headphones on and I was dictating the things as they came to me. And I hiked to the top. By the time I hit the top, I had figured everything out. So I hiked right back down and came home and wrote, another 3,000, 4,000 words or something. But it just worked out. Every time that it happens, I go on a walk and I was like, you know what? I am going to go to that mountain because it's been a few months since I've done it. It's a really, really awesome view. It's like the highest mountain on this side of the river, so you can see the whole city. And then if you turn around and look the other way, it's like absolutely empty grasslands. It is amazing. So that's one of my good news, is that I figured things out. Oh, and I think I told you guys last week that I got a kayak, and I was trying to trade up for a larger size, and I found someone who traded for me for a proper 12-foot kayak that I fit. And so I got to take it out on the lake for the first time this weekend, and it was marvelous. I didn't sink, which is really the only reason that I wanted to trade up. And it was awesome just going and hanging out on the water. I was kayaked for like an hour. I had my audio book going on. It was like some pretty cool places where I could like go in between the trees and like little tiny islands. And there's like fallen trees, inside the lake. You can see the bottom, and it was actually really, really intense at parts. It was like, okay, is that tree, close enough to scrape the bottom of my kayak? But it was a really, really awesome time. And so I'm super excited that I get to do that now. And I think I've got like 2 weeks of summer left, or 2 weeks where it's warm enough to kayak, and that's kind of it.
Dude, I will trade you, please. It's raining here in Austin, and I'm like, just keep those floods a coming, because Jesus Lord, it was 108 last Saturday, so
I've heard it's pretty hot, but you know what? It's been actually pretty cold here, to where it's like if you go a little higher into the mountains or like the lakes that are on the mountaintops, and I mean like 100 meters of elevation higher, 200 meters max, it's cold enough that you have to wear a sweater and you can't get in the water and stuff. So summer is coming to its end in Canada. Adalia, to answer your question of wildlife on the mountain, no. I mean, there's like bazillions of grasshoppers for some reason. It's grasshopper season here in Canada, but it's all kind of grasslands and fairly scrubby, not quite desert, but just short of desert. So it's pretty bare. I mean, there are places where you can find like cougars, I think. There may be some coyotes. There's deer still meandering around, but not on top of the mountain. They're in my backyard.
Awesome. Is that it?
Yep, that's it. Those are my good newses.
I thought you were going to say you finished like book 13. I don't know any more of these days.
No, I still got another probably 2 weeks left on that.
Gotcha. I found the picture, and I'm gonna send it to myself so we can share the screen.
What? Yeah, I would love to see it.
I'm gonna do it right now, but I have to segue. That is my job, people. I keep this show a rolling. So we're gonna roll right into this topic I know very much about, so much, but I'm gonna let Somaiya kind of take over. I think she might know a little bit more than me, but Somaiya, where are you from?
So I was actually born in Ohio, but my father is African American and my mother is Moroccan.
Oh wow! So do you speak French?
No. I took French in high school, but I do not speak my colonizer's language.
So because there's you said your dad's African?
African American. He's Black.
Oh, okay. But your your mom does speak French?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, man, I learned something so cool about Morocco. I just know, weren't they the first people to accept America as America?
That's entirely possible. That's not something that I know, but that is totally possible. America 1776. It's Morocco. Well, it's like the Maghreb. So yeah, it's totally possible, but I don't know one way or another.
I don't know how to say Morocco. Is it Moroccans? Is that plural? Because in French it's la Maroc. But
Moroccans, yeah.
They will fatten you up.
Oh yeah.
Like, God, they just want to get you in their house just to feed you. And I'm
so
full.
I think this is really a thing for like everyone except white people. because I have never gone to like a brown or black person's house who has not offered me like a shit ton of food. But white people are really shocked by this, by like how much like you like I'm full is not an acceptable statement in a household.
Yep.
No, but yeah.
As someone who lived in Mexico for 16 years, I know exactly what you mean. The abuelitas, they just pile your plate high, and it is the best food that you'll ever eat.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're not full," and you're like, "Oh, no, I'm full." You're like, "Oh, you haven't eaten anything. You've eaten like 2 plates."
A comment from the audience actually confirming, in a way, Stevie, what you said. The first U.S. embassy in the world was in Morocco.
Okay, I thought it was something like that. They're cool people is really how I should have just said that, but I'm sending those pictures to me now. But so Somaiya, why this topic? This, I'm sure this was your idea, right?
Yes. So the topic. Does the audience know the topic?
The topic is like complex identities. So it was suggested like people of color or people with sort of the less common the genders, the like non-binary
So
or
marginalized identities.
Exactly. All of them, sort of the struggle that they have to establish their sense of identity. And that's a super interesting thing it's something that I would say I've taken for granted my entire life. So it's interesting to hear the perspective of people who have struggled from it a lot more.
Yeah, so I suggested it, or I came up with it because the books really center around that. For those of you who haven't read the books or aren't familiar with them, the first one tells the story of Amani. Well, the first and the second one tells the story of a girl named Amani. She lives on this very small moon called Cadiz, and it's orbiting a much larger planet called Andala. And 20 years ago, the Vath, which are like an imperial conquering force, shows up in her solar system and conquers the planet and the moons. And so Amani is only living in the after. So she's grown up post-conquest, living under occupation. And the night of her coming of age ceremony, the Imperial Garda storm the Kesba where they're celebrating. And they kidnap her because apparently she looks like she's an exact copy of the Imperial Princess, who is half Andalan and half Vathic. And so she like gets pulled into all of these politics, but one of the things that is really important to the book and to her character arc is that she realizes that Maram, the Imperial Princess, has this like identity struggle because she's half Vathic, but she's also half Andalan, and she looks exactly like Amani. So she doesn't have the fantasy version of like white passing privilege in any sort of way, and everyone is constantly reminding her that she doesn't actually look like one of the conquerors. She looks like one of the conquered. And a way that I summarize her character is that she's essentially the product of a war crime because her father marries her mother in order to basically avoid to legalize the occupation of the planet, and so that the mother can avoid like the genocide of her planet, right? And so Maram is always really keenly aware of like she is a compromise and she is a war crime, and this is how she makes sense of her world and how she moves through it. And Amani becomes an opportunity for her first to exert all of her cruelty, all of her anger and self-loathing, because she gets to watch Amani be better loved than her and be a better version of her out in the world. But then also Amani becomes sort of a gateway for her to learn about empathy and compassion. And in fact, responsibility, because it's a coming of age story. So like her having to realize and struggle with the fact that she has a political responsibility to the people on her planet to protect them from the violence that her father has been enacting for the last 20 years and will continue to enact unless she does something about it.
Interesting. And so go ahead, Stevie.
No, I'm sure yours is much more intelligent than mine.
No, I was going to say, so what is she struggling with in terms of her identity?
For Amani, she is struggling by being a person of color who's living under occupation. And so like she is denied very simple things like access to her culture, access to like the literary and artistic legacy of her culture, a total and complete understanding that any sort of expression of that culture is punished immediately. Like one of the first things that happens to her in the book when she's taken to the Imperial Palace is that her the dam that have just been tattooed on her face, so their facial markings that mark family and religion, are stripped off of her skin. Like that's one of the first things that happens. So it's very literal disenfranchisement and being disinherited from religion, right? And so one of the things that I was drawing on when I was thinking about how we think about culture and how we're allowed to relate to culture is in Morocco during the 60s, when it's sort of consolidating and what's the word I'm looking, solidifying its sort of national identity, is that there's this huge crackdown on indigenous expression, because there are many indigenous ethnic groups in North Africa. Collectively, they're called Amazigh. And to basically in Morocco up until very recently, like you couldn't have an indigenous name on a birth certificate. Indigenous languages are not taught in schools. There's no indigenous language like broadcasting or television. And until very recently, all of the signage in Morocco was French and Arabic. So there is no indigenous language signage, even though like most people in Morocco are indigenous. And my mother, who is Shuhi and Sahrawi, her father is Sahrawi and her mother is Shuhi, wasn't allowed to speak Shuhi, which is her indigenous language, in the classroom, right? So there are all of these things that are built specifically, like legislation that are built specifically to disenfranchise people from their cultural inheritance and their cultural legacy. And so I drew on that really strongly and really explicitly in thinking about how Amani moves through the world, right? Like she's a super compassionate girl, but she's always struggling because like she understands, like one of the other things that happens is when she's talking to Nadine about like what her skills are, she's bilingual, and Nadine is like, that's stupid. Like, I don't care that you speak a second whole other language, or that you're fluent or conversant in it in any kind of way. And so her struggle is really being able to assert an identity at all. And Maram is like feeling like she'll die if she attempts any sort of connection with this heritage, period.
Interesting. So it's based on I'm guessing it's the French occupation of Morocco?
No, interestingly enough, a lot of people assume it's the French occupation, but I actually read way more about, in the 60s and 70s, after Morocco had achieved its independence, they're called the Years of Lead, under Hassan II. And so it's because a perpetual problem for many states everywhere is like because borders are stupid and a social construct, and you have many ethnic groups who all have practiced sovereignty or a form of sovereignty for a long time. How do you unify those under one throne? And the way that they did it in Morocco, and the way that they do it in a lot of places, is they impose a linguistic and religious hegemony, an ethnic hegemony. So like most people think Moroccans are all Arab and that they all speak Arabic. And I think Arabic is like the official language in Morocco. And Hassan Athani was like, yeah, we're all Arab. We all speak Arabic. We're all Muslim, right? And none of that is true, of course, right? And like, for example, Fiends are still resisting up until this day because they don't want to be ruled by Moroccans. Yeah.
So this was a Moroccan sort of, attempting to unify, but in a way doing that just sort of like not whitewashed because it's not white, but whitewashed all of the other cultures essentially.
Yeah. And internally, like the thing is, like you go to Morocco and like everyone knows about, like there are a lot of people that are Arabized, but there are also a lot of people who are like, no, I'm from this culture, or I'm from this tribe, or like this is how we do it in Morocco, or they speak these languages. Like I didn't know my mom spoke Tahitian until I was like 24. But she's fluent, obviously. And so is like everybody else who lives in Morocco, they're fluent in their own particular indigenous language. And they speak, like all of my cousins who live in Morocco speak Tahitian. And it's totally like an outward facing socio-political thing, right? Like outsiders to Morocco don't know. And it's interesting because when I started talking about it online, because I kept getting called Arab online, and I like frankly had enough of it. And I was like, I'm not Arab. I know that's a really easy like assumption to make because I wear a hijab and that's it. And then I got like Arabs in my mentions who are like, there are no indigenous people in North Africa and you guys are all liars.
Wow.
It was very, and this happens like, I talked to a couple of other like Amazigh people. They're all like, yeah, the minute you start talking about indigenous representation in North Africa, Arabs show up to talk about how like this is some kind of conspiracy. I'm like, a conspiracy who benefits who? Who benefits from you making up an entire ethnic group?
So I actually have two questions, and I had something. The hijab in France is I don't believe it's illegal now, but I think they may be trying to make it illegal.
It's illegal in like government jobs because it falls under like religious dress.
You cannot hide your face in France.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. So there's these fundamentalists who wear the black, I forgot what that thing's called, where they cover up their face. A what?
Niqab.
Is that what that is?
Most people call it a burqa, but a burqa is a really particular form. And it's just
I think what I was thinking was, I think I've heard both, but those are illegal in France.
Mm-hmm.
Those are illegal.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, well, have you been to Morocco?
Yeah.
Do you experience any backlash for not speaking the language or not being full Moroccan or anything like that?
I do speak Arabic, and I don't speak it well enough that I pass as like a person who was raised in Morocco, but I speak enough. No, not really. Like I clock as Moroccan enough, like visually, that like Moroccan aunties clock me on the street. Like I went to a Madeleine cafe once, and one of the guys kept like looking at me, and I was like, what is this guy's problem? And then he came over and just started talking in Arabic to me because he recognized me as Moroccan. So I don't really experience, and it's actually really nice because like when you're in Morocco, you sort of, the hijab helps you blend in because there are a lot of, not like, Morocco's not secular, but it's, and like the official religion is Islam or whatever. But there are enough hijabis that I blend in a way that like I just don't blend in the United States. Like in my neighborhood, I am the only hijabi in my neighborhood, to the point where like a year ago, a hijabi showed up at my coffee shop and I was like, who is that? And I like literally went over and I was like, you don't live here. She was like, no, I don't live here.
What about the Black culture then? Do they, I guess, accept you? Do you have any problems on that side in America?
No, because I do this really cool thing called code switching. So like if you get me around like on either side, right, either with Moroccans or Black people, like I fit right in because I grew up with both. Like I grew up with my dad's family and I grew up with my mom's family. And there is a tension. Like there are always people who are sort of like, you're not enough of either. But for me, like it's not a sense of, I don't know. I know how to fit in. I know how to code switch. Like, and I think
so it's like a mini assimilation. Like, so right there, you assimilate to how they're acting, and then you revert back to who you really are. We kind of do that in day-to-day life.
It's not really a question of like who I really am. It's that like all of these parts sort of exist inside of me, and like you like your friends draw out different parts of you and encourage different parts of you.
Very true.
Emerge, right? And so like, when I'm in the classroom, I have like my professor persona and I sound like a posh white woman. And when I have, when I'm around like other Black people, there are things that we can talk about that like I wouldn't talk about like with white people or other people of color. And then when I'm around Moroccans or North Africans or people from North Africa or the Middle East sort of more broadly, then we talk about different things. And so different portions of my personality emerge.
I think you would have been a better professor than what I had. My class, he was very scary. I feel like I could actually ask you questions in class and not be afraid of getting backlash because of my ignorance, which is why I'm in class in the first place.
Here's the secret with professors, is most of them don't actually want to teach. They get into PhD programs and they get into the academy because they want to do research. But to fund their research, they have to actually teach. And they're not really incentivized to do it well once they get tenure. But they do have to keep doing it. And so like you get a lot of professors that are really begrudgingly in the classroom and like don't care about pedagogy at all. And I was the opposite. Like I got to a point where I like hated research and I just wanted to teach. Like I love my students. I teach freshmen almost exclusively. And they're like not jaded, because after 4 years with other grad students who are jaded and they don't approach we don't approach literature with any sincerity. We're very like skeptical of everything, and everything is a problem that needs to be fixed. And 18-year-olds are sort of like, they get to the end of Jane Eyre and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe Rochester is like that for the first time. They're like encountering these problems. They're encountering everything for the first time. And it's way more fun. So.
It's off topic. Is marhaba hello in Arabic?
Marhaban, yeah.
Marhaba, okay. I don't know why that just popped in my head. Show off that I know a word.
I have a question for you. When you see portrayals of Moroccans or North Africans or Arabs on TV or in movies, do you think, okay, it's awesome that they're finally showing it, or do you feel like, oh, they're not showing the full picture? Or like, for example, the show FBI, they have one of the two main characters is I think he's Lebanese, and his character is Lebanese American. The FBI. It's called FBI.
Which channel is this on? I've never heard of this show.
I think it's CBS. Just Google FBI TV show and you'll find it. And the way that they portray this guy as a practicing Muslim, as a former our U.S. Army Ranger, as someone who's still very enmeshed in his family's culture. I believe Lebanese is the one. I could be totally wrong though.
And he's in the FBI?
Yeah. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, finally we get someone who's not, your pretty classic American white guy, or, like LL Cool J from NCIS Los Angeles, badass black dude, or like, so I was interested to see sort of that new character representation in the show. And I think he's one of my favorite, cop type characters because of that aspect of his persona. And it's not like every episode is about that. In fact, there have been far fewer episodes about his belief or his culture than I would have liked, because I want to see more of that to be able to understand it better.
I tell you right off the bat, almost nobody gets it right. Like, he's in the FBI. I'm sure there are Lebanese guys in the FBI just the same way, but like when, especially post 9/11, everyone's afraid to be asked to spy on their communities. And some guys are like the dicks who will spy on their communities. But like, I know so many people who are fluent in Arabic, and there was such a demand for CIA operatives who are fluent in Arabic and like Pashtun and Urdu. And they were all like, I'm not doing it. I don't want to spy on my own community. I will not take the job. So like on a basic level, there's for me, oftentimes what happens when I'm encountering these representations is that there is an agenda of like, they can be patriotic too. There's no attention to like difficulties of being patriotic in a country that is both a police state and a terrible imperial warmongering force in like your home countries. There's no attention to the ways in which like that's a real conflict, and it is really hard to be patriotic about a country that's dropping bombs where your grandma lives. Like that just, but also like they don't, like most TV writers don't think of us as people. They don't think of us as like people who have fully formed personalities or conflicts or communities that are not interested in being part of a police state or helping to mobilize the police state, and all of this other stuff. So like the most realistic North African representation I've seen in the last 5 years is Marwan Kanzari in The Old Guard. And he's a Tunisian actor.
Yeah.
And that was
the
I fucking love that. The Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
The Cheryl. But that's also because he barely speaks. So,
a comment from the audience. Someone would like to high five you right now.
But like I'm not looking for representation in these TV shows just because like, they don't like, they just like, to me it's interesting when like, for example, when Quantico came out, everybody was like, oh, there's a Palestinian. I was like, oh, Palestinians go to Quantico now? For real? Where's her mom?
Not the twins?
Yeah, there's the twins, and then there's there's the twins, and I think the actress was Palestinian, or she's Palestinian in the show or something like that. And I was just like, that's fake.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like really truly generally not looking for accurate representation in television. I'm much more likely to find it in books, simply also because that's where we're working. That's where like North Africans and Middle Easterners and Arabs and stuff, they're working in books, and that's where they're interested.
Do you think by trying we're making it worse?
Here's the problem is I don't think that you're trying. Like I don't, because what trying looks like is not going, I'm going to write this character. What it looks like is like, where are the people that I can elevate to work in this field to write these characters instead? Right? Like why do you want to take on this role of writing these people? That's not. Do you know any of these people? Like I guarantee you the writer's room for Quantico is all white. And they don't know any people of color. They certainly don't know any people, you know? So it's not a question of like, should you be attempting to write this? It's like, okay, but people from those communities can write those things. And why aren't you looking for them to uplift them? I mean, this is like a perpetual problem in publishing.
So let me ask you now, let's give them a chance to uplift them on our small platform. Are there any writers who are portraying this type of person that you feel accurately, whether it's in fantasy or in sci-fi or any genre? Is there one that you were like, I loved reading this character because I identified with these aspects of what were portrayed?
Yeah, I'm like looking at my shelf. I'm really lucky I got my shelf right next to me, because what happens is when you ask me about books, I forget every book I've ever read. Oh, yeah. Tasha Surian's Empire of Sand is really great. It's a Mughal India inspired fantasy, and that was really fantastic. And she, I believe, is Indian. Ken Liu is a really easy reach because I feel like everyone has read him. But he wrote The Grace of Kings, which is a Chinese inspired dynastic fantasy series. Janet Nee wrote Under the Pendulum Sun, which is a really fabulous Victorian fantasy, sort of like Under the Hill, that is like deeply critical of missionary work in the Victorian era, and that was really, really great. Kaya Shante Wilson, hello. Sorry. He wrote Sorcerer of the Will Deeds, which is one of my favorite novellas, and it does such great work like incorporating the Black diaspora into like a fantasy landscape. And it's actually one that I taught. And then the other fantasy novel that I taught this past summer was Ngivo's Empress of Salt and Fortune, which is a really, really fantastic Chinese dynastic novella from 12 books.
Sounds familiar. Have you read Evan Winter's Rage of Dragons?
I haven't. That's on my list. It's like this big, so
yeah, it's a big boy.
I got bumped down.
Yeah, that's another one that I have been told. I haven't read it yet because, like you, it's a big book, a big commitment. Yeah. But I've been told that it's a really interesting, sort of like I don't know how to pronounce her name, Nnedi Okorafor, I think. Sort of an interesting representation of African culture in a fantasy context that people are familiar with, and so sort of pairing the fantasy that we all love, like Rage of Dragons, is compared to Game of Thrones in the sense that it's that that sort of backstabbing, bickering, clashing cultures, but it's all set in sort of I believe Central African-esque kingdom, and from what I hear, it's an excellent story. Do you have any unknown authors that you have read and said, oh, I love their books? Like, these were all big name books, but any indie fantasy authors or indie authors in general, or sort of new, trying to be discovered authors that you would recommend?
Oh, new authors that I would recommend. I'm looking at my shelf.
That's totally fine. No is an acceptable answer if it's too hard to think of one.
I will say River Solomon's The Deep also. That's on my to be read list, and their work has been recommended to me. The Deep is a transatlantic. I'm not actually going to try to summarize it because I don't actually think that I remember exactly what it's about. But they are an African American fantasy writer, and they've sold a novella or a novel to Saga Press, I want to say, or Orbit. But their novella, The Deep, has been on my list forever, and I just bought the paperback.
Very cool.
Andy, do we really only have 10 minutes left?
And we really only have 10 minutes. It went by so fast.
You want to do the reading then?
Let's do the reading before we run out of time.
Okay.
Because this has been super interesting.
Yeah, it usually we don't even do the reading when it gets, when we have an interesting topic. But
the people start to get mad. They really like it. Somaiya, I know I'm playing the two girls, right? What are their names?
Amani and Maram.
Okay, and real quick, just a little bit about each one, just quick.
Sorry, my cat was crying outside. So Amani is the main character, and she's a very compassionate young woman who, in the beginning of Court of Lions, so at the end of Mirage, something terrible happens, and so she's been put into isolation. And she understands that her life is hanging by a thread, and her family's life is hanging by a thread, and so she's being summoned out into the world for the first time in 6 weeks. And then Maram is the Imperial Princess, who Amani is her body double, and their relationship is kind of contentious because it's sort of hard when you're a terrible gremlin of a 17-year-old girl to then watch your body double go out and be the better version of you. So they have a contentious relationship.
Okay, I think I'm good then.
All right, take it away.
All right. Simba, I swear to God, if you start crying at me.
Stevie,
All right.
I swear to God, Stevie, if you start crying at me.
All right. A small smile stole across my features, then faded. I was lucky he yet lived. Aziz had likely had to tie him up to keep him from reaching out to the rebels the Vast suspected of hiding on our small moon. I was still thinking of him and the rest of my family when Tala came to collect me.
The High Stewardess has commanded your presence,
she said softly. I set the loom down, throat dry.
Now?
I asked. She nodded.
Come, let's get you dressed quickly.
I dressed, and once done, Tala draped a hooded mantle over my shoulders and drew the hood over my hair. Our walk was short and quiet, and at last we returned to the aviary where I'd held my first audience with Nadine. The High Stewardess sat on a chair as she had on our first meeting, flanked by 4 droids and with Maram to her right. Maram didn't acknowledge our entrance, but the droids came to attention and Nadine smiled. All these weeks, I dreaded my meeting with Nadine. She was the shadow cast over my internment, my jailer and kidnapper, determined to break me by any means. I expected to feel small and afraid as I sank to my knees before her. I didn't. A hot anger sat in the pit of my belly, churning. Anger at the stewardess and everything she represented, and anger at myself for my ignorance. She was an adversary I'd never accounted for, the hand on Maram's cradle, the snake in the grass, the whisper in her ear. If not for Nadine, perhaps, I might have convinced Maram of the truth, that I was her friend, her sister. Nadine's arrogance and hatred had stolen my home, hurt my family, and finally turned my friend away from me.
How penitent you seem,
she drawled, coming to stand over me.
My lady.
I murmured, then raised my head a little.
Your Highness.
Maram did not meet my gaze. There was a dazed look to her, as if she had slipped somewhere deep inside herself. She had no desire to be here, I realized with a start. Did she not want to see me? What had transpired in the 6 weeks since we'd last seen each other? I knew her, though. I knew her, though Nadine, I was sure, wish I didn't. I knew greatness and kindness lay in her. I knew that if given the chance, she would be a great queen, that if given the strength, she would stand up for what was right. Maram understood the weight of her mother's legacy as much as she had shied from it in the end. If she were out of Nadine's shadow, I just knew.
Do you know why you're alive?
Nadine said.
I am Maram's only twin.
I said, rather than hold my tongue.
The penitence was a ruse, then?
Nadine said. The droids raised their arms as one.
Some contrition would be well worth your while, girl.
I have done my duty.
I replied, still looking at Maram.
She is alive.
Maram stared at me, her eyes blank, her chin propped up on the heel of her hand. She looked as a traumatized child might. She had endured this particular horror before, and today she had shut down and refused to engage.
She's right,
she said dully, and made a gesture with her hand. The droids retracted their weapons and returned to standing attention.
Get on with it, Nadine.
I frowned in confusion. It?
In a week,
Nadine said. Was that glee? And returned to her seat.
Her Highness will be getting married. The wedding is a public affair. You will take her place.
My eyes widened in horror. Never would I have imagined that I would have to go through her marriage on her behalf. I had given up Idris, up I had given Idris up after seeing what Nadine would do to my family. Like my connection to the rebels, the cost of our relationship was too high. I loved him. Dehya knew how much I loved him, but there was no world in which we could be together.
It's a sacred right.
I gasped out.
For the Vath and the Kushela, you cannot mean to have me proxy for you.
Proxy marriages were an old and antiquated tradition. In the past, they were the product of distance and necessity. In some places, parents proxied for their children. But we all of us understood that regardless of who went through the ritual, it was the people on whose behalf we enacted those rituals that were married. And so though it would be me standing there, Maram and Idris would be the ones who were wed. She raised an eyebrow, and the Maram I'd known at the beginning of my sojourn in the Ziana appeared.
Yes.
She drawled.
It is entirely reasonable that I should allow Idris, my political shield among your people, to marry my shield, a farmer's daughter.
I struggled to not lower my gaze, even as I flushed hot with embarrassment.
Then why?
I whispered.
Sending a proxy in place is perfectly legal. It will not take away from its sanctity and legitimacy. He will still be married to me.
Her face was now entirely blank, her voice flat. I was in the grip of a panic, my chest tight with anxiety. I did not want to see him again, to watch those feelings rise up, to have a hand in giving him to someone else.
But
I started.
It is public.
Nadine repeated.
And this is why you yet live. If you will shirk your duty, then I will march you straight to the executioner.
I almost reached for Maram, almost begged. The intervening weeks had healed the wound of letting him go, of tearing him out of my heart. This, going through the motions of a marriage to him for someone else, would undo it all. Maram stood from her chair as silent as a ghost and walked to me. The hem of her skirts brushed over my knees.
is there a problem?
She asked softly.
Or are your words hollow?
I drew in a shuddering breath and closed my eyes.
No, Your Highness.
I said.
I am capable of fulfilling my duty.
Her hand came beneath my chin, the hold gentle, as if she were cradling a child, as if the look in her eye, that she might take my head at any moment, was not there.
Understand, Amani.
She said softly.
I would do anything just to spite you.
And then her hand was gone, and she swept out of the room, an orchestra of fluttering skirts and the chime of jewelry following in her wake.
Ooh.
Beautifully written.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
It's
So that was from Court of Lions, a Mirage novel. It's the second book in the series. The
But you
first
should
one
buy
is
it
called
first.
Mirage. That's an easy one to remember.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Now, before, what was that, Stevie?
Oh, I was gonna say, is that illustration of you?
No.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know.
Stevie, you shameless flirt.
No.
No.
A.
The first one, I don't know who she's an illustration of, but the second one is I sent the Moroccan lead on that Netflix show Elite as a reference. And so like, I'm sure I had a conversation with another author, Rory Power, where like, I'm sure a lot of people are looking at the cover and going, where do I know this girl from? And you know her from Netflix.
Very cool. Elite is a Spanish show, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Now, before we go, I like to spring this question on the guests, a question to sort of bring it back to the more deeper topics that we like to discuss. So the question is, what do you think are two vital habits or traits for a successful human being? Not a successful author, but a successful human being.
Oh, God, become a robot is really the successful habit. Not to sound too woo-woo, but self-love and determination.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one a lot. Very cool. And a question from the audience, Somaiya, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somaiya is your author name as well, right? Somaiya Daud.
Yep.
Very, very cool. You guys can check her out on Amazon. Where else are your books sold? Barnes and Nobles, all the other ones?
Yeah, wherever retailers sell books, you can find me.
Very good. Go check them out. And it's a duology, right? The Mirage series. Excellent. So go check those out. There's 2 books. You are going to love it. That's it for us, Stevie. You want to sign us out?
Yeah, but be sure to be here on Monday for another awesome episode of Deranged and Questing, where
absolutely.
What?
I was going to say, absolutely. We just
Okay.
woke up after a night of insane partying and drinking with pixies and found ourselves surrounded by assassins. So we don't know what kind of assassins, but it's going to be fun.
I think that's the most Dungeons and Dragon-y thing I've ever heard in my life.
How we roll, Stevie.
That's awesome. Well, guys, remember that's on Monday. Be there because you can also be a part of the show. They will, chat has a big part of that. So you have to be there live. It's very important. And they are on YouTube and Twitch. And Facebook.
Streaming exclusive to Twitch.
Oh, just on Twitch. So get your butt to Twitch.
Yep.
Somaiya, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
Do you have any social platforms you want to?
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Somaiya Daud. You can find me online at SomaiyaBooks.com, and you can find me on Instagram at Somaiya, and that's 3 I's and 1 Y.
Very,
awesome.
very
Thank
cool.
you so much for being with us today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Also, Andy, before we go, I want to share my screen.
Do it.
Hold on.
Oh, yes. Anita had a very, very good point for people to come back for Monday. I wear a helmet.
Yeah. Okay. I am.
Here we go. Let's see this picture.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There it is, boys and girls. Andy and I.
And the funny thing is that's sort of like a high angle. If you went at it like straight, the size differences would even be more noticeable.
You know what's sad is I'm wearing Timberlands, which gives me a 3-inch boost. I'm not joking. That's a 3-inch boost. And don't forget this.
That is a classic Andy and Stevie picture.
Yep. I mean, I think that was like the second picture we took. It was too easy. God, you're strong too.
You're also not a very large person. Like
No.
relatively speaking compared to me. So
yes, I was 165 in that picture. So
you're 2 centimeters taller than my wife.
God dang. Awesome. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that funny picture of Andy and I. I've been meaning to look for it. It's not on Facebook. I need to put it there. Guys, we love you all. Remember, Monday, got to be there on Twitch. Thursday, we have another awesome author for you guys. We hope you have a wonderful day. If you want to help us out, you can share this on Facebook. Remember to comment down below and like this YouTube channel, this YouTube video, because it helps the algorithms. We love you all, and we'll see you next time on the Fantasy Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good night.